guys looking at today?
We are looking at the standard KCC4, understanding the relationship between numbers and quantities, counting numbers 11 to 20. And we are focusing on this standard because we have just finished our mid-year math assessment, and we feel that the children, most of the children are ready to move on to this next task, and also this is also where in the pacing guide where we should be.
Alright, cool. So what is that specific objective? Like, I don't know what that objective is.
KCC4.
Okay.
Understand the relationship between numbers and quantities, connect counting to carnality.
Okay.
And we're going to come back and do our thing, right?
Okay.
Who's doing it?
I think it's you. Yes. I did it December.
Hefner.
No, I can't do it.
Me. Sorry. Yes.
Okay. So in our, for our pre-test to do this, in the formative instruction assessment task that we were given on, for task 5, they have cards with different shapes on them that has for the counting. And so then you can see that they are counting 1 to 1, and then they can also write the number, and the numbers can be up to 20. So we can have a number, even though we are starting our focus on 11 to 20, we can have numbers that are less than that.
And like, we're kind of looking for 3 things though.
Okay.
Because like when you look on your unpacking where it says, you know, what does the standard mean a child will know and be able to do. On the A part it says like, so when you give the assessment, it's probably going to have to be more of a one-on-one thing, because you're going to want to see what strategies they're using to keep track of the objects that they're counting.
Mm-hmm.
Like if they're marking it or, you know, using their eyes or however are they keeping track of it. And then with the part B says that they have to understand the last number name said tells the number of objects counted. So we have to have a part where we say how many are there. And I guess our goal will be that they would have to say there are 10 triangles, or are there 5, blah, blah, blah. Because it says oftentimes children who have not developed cardinality will count the amount again, not realizing that 10, they stated it means 10 objects in all. So you ever had that before where they say like they counted it and then they know it 10. So how many are there? Hold on. And they just said it. So I wonder if it's something that we need to like score it, like is it a, instead of just did they get it right?
I know that with the state assessment, if they didn't say 4 children, then they would get a lower score.
But do you see like when that part where, okay, like let's say they said 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many are there?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
When they count again,
Right.
that lets you know that they're like,
That B is not.
yeah, that would be a point or not. You see what I'm saying?
Right,
Don't you think?
absolutely.
So they can do this part, but they don't know this part yet.
Right. Well, they have to be like,
That
okay, what was
they
it
don't have
again?
that strategy.
They have, no, they lost.
They need to know that that whole amount is that quantity.
The last
And
number
they
that they
say
said is the answer.
Last number tag. And so kids that can add, that's going to help them in adding, because if they've already, like they're looking at an amount, this amount, this amount.
So that means, oh, sorry.
Like in this picture here,
Mhm.
if they know that this is 6, 7, then they know this is 7. You know, just looking at it, I know that's 7, that looks the same, so that's 7. Or they'll be able to say 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, because they won't have to count all of them individually all over again.
So I guess here is with B, part B basically I guess it's saying that means if they don't say it automatically, there's 10, that they have not yet developed cardinality.
I'm going to call it automatic recall of last number tag. And so if they count, that's great. They've got a strategy there. But if they don't automatically recall the last number they tag, then you're saying they don't understand.
Yeah,
That's what it says.
That's
It's
what it
saying
says
they're
on
not
there.
counting with meaning, which that makes a lot of sense.
Okay, counting with meaning.
Yeah.
Oh,
Like especially like even when you read to get something out of it. You count to
That's
get
true.
something out I think that's a big thing we could focus in on too. You're not just saying numbers, you have to get to an answer or you have to.
There's a purpose.
There's-
You just counted for a purpose and you just didn't remember. And it also says like, young children believe what they see. Therefore, they may believe that a pile of cubes that they counted may be more if spread apart in a line. So I guess too, like, instead of having it maybe on paper, it should be something that, kind of like the little blue boards I have, that are magnetic, and probably have it in an arrangement, and then, like, say if it's like that, and they counted 5. And then it's saying, if you mess that arrangement up and you say, so how many are there now? And if they have to count it again, then, I mean, I didn't move anything, I just moved it around. They're not understanding, that, it just says that children need many experiences with counting objects, before they develop this milestone, knowing that if I mess it up and put it in a line, it's still gonna be 5 regardless of how. So I guess that's the other part of that to it. You see what I'm saying?
Okay.
And I've done stuff like that with some of my kids before, where in front of them I'll show, okay, now how many are there? And half of them will look at me like, well, of course there's still 5. Like, all you did was move them around. But then you've got a couple kids, you can tell they're like,
So
wait,
they're
what are you counting again?
Yes.
Isn't that
That's-
also
you can
that
see.
conservation, is that what it is, like when they, like you spread out, you make the line longer but spread out, it's the same amount under it but it's closer together, which one has more, you know? So I wonder
It's
if
a part
this
B.
is the age for them to be differentiating that anyways.
In our,
Okay.
in that mid-year review, mid-year test that we took, they had those dots where they had rearranged, where it was a
Three.
set of 3, where it was one way, and then 3 another way.
Okay. Like the Subotizen part, yes or no? Is that?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, cool.
So part B kind of is like asking 2 things, like, do they understand the last number they said means that's how many in the object, and that the objects, the number of objects is the same regardless of their arrangement in order.
Okay. Number is the same regardless of arrangement. Okay.
That's it for B.
B, alright.
And then there's C, and it says, understand that each successive number name refers to a quantity that is one larger. And there is one assessment in here, I think, that does it, like, if you put one more, how many are there now?
There's like a 1 more and 2 more.
And this says it's another milestone. It's called inclusion. Inclusion is based on the understanding that numbers build by exactly 1 each time that they nest within each other by this amount. For example, a set of 3 objects is nested within a set of 4 objects within the same set of 4 objects. That is also a set of 2 objects and a set of 1. Using this understanding, if a student has 4 objects and wants to have 5 objects, the student is able to add on 1 more, knowing that the 4 is within the subpart 5. This concept is critical for the later development of part-whole relationships. Students are asked to understand this concept with and without, objects 0 to 20. For example, after counting a set of 8 objects, students answer the question, how many would there be if we added 1 more object? And answer a similar question when not using objects by asking hypothetically, what if we had 5 cubes and added 1 more? How many cubes would there be now?
A lot of mine when we did that had to count them over again. Only my high ones were able to say 10
6.
or however many it was.
Right, and they look at you like, why are you asking me that? Those kids do.
Because again, that also was in our, that was one of the questions in the mid-year exam, where you had, you put out 8 bears, or 7 bears, 7 counters, or 7 bears, and then you added 3 more, and then see if they could kind of tell from there by adding there. And,
It didn't count it this time, did it?
no,
It just said
it
for
was
you
just
to
an
say.
extra little
Yeah.
step, and it was very interesting to see how some of them could just right away, they took that 7, and I put 3 more out, and they could get that, and others had to recount.
Okay. So this, okay. Yeah, so some of our kids had to recount because they didn't have the automatic recall.
Mm-hmm.
And then some of them even if you just rearranged it, I wonder if they would still get the same number. They might have to still count, but then that would put them back, wouldn't it? I mean, it's almost like you have to have this one before you can do this one, right? Does that make sense?
Right. And,
Because if it's in a different arrangement and they still have to count it, then they really don't have this one or this one.
and again, in that assessment, they did have one where you were supposed to sporadically put out 7, like, don't put them in a line, but just sporadically put them out. And that would have been interesting to see if you would have added on to that, even though you added 3 more, but if you would have just, after they got 7, if you would have added, if you would have taken them back and put them at 7 a different way, to see
Right,
if
just
they would
move
have
them
able
around.
to.
Well, are you supposed to take them back? Okay, that's what I was saying.
You're not supposed to take them back, they're supposed to be able to see it.
Right. But what I'm saying is if you would have, like, after they did the 7, you added the 3, if you would have taken all of them and did 7 again, a different way to see if they could have tagged that along, as Ms. Diaz was saying before.
But
with
what
the
you said,
magnets.
you don't take them back. You move them in front of, while this in front of them. You
Oh,
don't take them all.
Right.
I think she's
again.
saying like, but if you did, would they notice?
You mean put them out of their view?
no, what I'm saying is, okay, you have 7. Okay, now you're moving 7 again, but you're moving them in a different pattern. Would they still be able to do that? That wasn't
Oh,
in the
yeah,
assessment. That's what I was saying.
Oh,
So, and I know I said the word take back, but yeah, basically just kind of rearrange them 7 a different way.
But I think like if we do an assessment, it'll be better if we don't do something like that and we do something more where we manipulate it, or they can manipulate it as well, so that we can do that. Oh, here's 5,
Mm-hmm.
and now here's what is it now? So we can ask those questions because I guess it's more one-on-one.
Right.
And you can use the coins that have like, there's red on one side and yellow on the
Yes.
other if you wanted to do parts. Also,
Okay. Yeah, but like where you have red and then you put a yellow one on there at the end?
Mm-hmm.
to do like the one more.
Okay.
One more,
gotcha.
2 more,
Okay,
to see if they could figure out how many are there now.
gotcha.
And
Okay.
we could, so
Yeah, what would be, so now that we, like, if we wanna look at this and there's all these different levels, what would be something that would be easy to do with them? Even, I mean, you,
like,
when we're thinking about creating an assessment, it could be whole group, I mean, we could use whiteboards, you know, or it could be small group, or it could be individual. So when we're thinking about this, let's think about the easiest way to assess so that it's not gonna be so time consuming for us to collect the data. You know what I'm saying? Cause we just did K2 math assessments and let's be real, you had to do them individually and you had to,
Right.
it takes a long time. So let's figure out a way to make it easier,
Well, as you just said, having it in small groups with boards,
okay?
that they could, you would sporadically, you know, put out the number and they would have to write it on and
Okay.
just pretend not to show it to anybody, and then everybody show your answer, everybody say what it was, and then we would count it.
I have a thinking math in my room that, I guess it'd be a thinking math, but it's like the 3 different ways to count things. And I think I saw it in your room. And
Yes.
it has the 3 different ways. So some kids are gonna be able to look at it and count it in their head and write the number. But some kids are gonna have to like actually put their finger on it. to the
Right.
point. And then other kids, like especially the low ones, are gonna have to take it and move it. So I don't know if it's gonna be,
Unless you would have them, like you would have the same set, if you would do, let's say, 2 or 3, especially for some of the low ones, because yes, I also have that in my room about the different ways to count. Maybe have
We
it
have to move it up.
move,
right,
Touch and
count,
move.
touch and move.
touch and move, and have different, like, have the same amounts out, like maybe
So,
separate them in a baggie and then just kind of put them out and have them do that touch and count for some who need that and for some who just can.
Or maybe even if you had a bag that, you know, each bag has
different.
5 in it or whatever, and then you give them all the bags, or like you said, even if you did a different one, so they'd have their whiteboard, and they would have a bag, put it out, they could count it however they wanted to, you could write notes about how they're counting, whether they're doing just looking or touch and move, and then, okay, put everything in a bag, and then pass it to the next person, and then they write down their answer again.
That, I think, I like that idea a lot better because I do see some children who depend on another child when it comes to, they don't have that confidence to write that answer, that they're looking for somebody, oh, what basically kind of like, what answer do you have, or what are you doing, I'm gonna write the same number, even though you're trying to keep them from, but if you have different ones, then you can kind of check out each one and they could kind of move
And even
down.
if you use different objects,
Yeah.
that way
So
you
you could
would
use a
know
different
which
number.
one they're talking about, or if you somehow labeled the bag, like bag number 2, many's in bag number 2.
You could do that, that would be good.
One
Yes.
color,
Do
have it all
different-
the same color. in
Have
each
it,
bag.
have the color.
Different, amount in each bag, that way you know they can't cheat or whatever, and just write down what strategy they're using. And then, so then how would we go about doing the moving it around stuff? Just move it around in front of them? Or will we do that independently, or?
And then like, how are we scoring them? I know you're saying you're taking notes, which is wonderful, exactly what you do is take notes on who's doing what. But like, how would you score them? You know what I mean? Like, whether or not they have it or they don't have it, or.
You could do, I don't know, like maybe if they had A, B, and C, that would be exceeding or something. Cause I know like pretty much all of mine, I think on my mid-year, I had like 17 of them that could do the 1-to-1.
But then once it gets to these bigger numbers, like 19 and 18, keeping track is gonna be a little bit harder to do than it is from 1 to 10.
Yeah.
They're gonna have to use more of their strategies than before when it was 5. A lot of them were like, that's 5. Especially your high ones that already kind of count.
Okay.
And then you get
And
into
then we
the,
also did like weigh certain range objects, which I mean, that's a different standard, but I mean, that was a good strat. Like some of mine use that, like if it's a lot, they might put them in a line, they might put them in a circle, they might put them in a rectangular array, stuff like that. And that kind of helps. That helps my high one. Like all my high ones like to put them in the rectangular array and know that they're 5 on each line.
Oh yeah, they're used to seeing dice or whatever, so they put 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1 in the middle.
No, they do like the line.
Oh, they do in a
rectangular
long
array,
a long
5,
array.
5, 5, and
I think they start
Okay.
getting used to like the 10 frame and the double 10 frame.
Yeah.
Kind of,
Okay. So that would be under move it, right? So they're kind of like grouping
right.
when they do
Right.
that. So when they're moving it, that's the same thing as grouping it, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Arranging.
A lot of my low ones, I pretty much push the touch and move, because a lot of them wouldn't have that 1-to-1. So I'm like, well, it's great that you